Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here, and welcome to Movie Reviews, where we review movies. This video's movie is Birds of Passage, which is directed by the directors of Embrace of the Serpent, or at least one of them directed it, the other one produced it. That movie was nominated for Best Foreign Film. It's a black and white odyssey into the Amazon jungle. Overall, that was a movie that was really interesting, like visually incredible. What I liked a lot about that movie is that it was trying to give you like the spiritual experience that you were seeing on screen. So I was pretty excited for this movie, especially hearing that it's like a masterpiece. Went out and saw it. It's really only playing in like one theater in New York, so I'm pretty lucky to have seen it. I guess most people aren't really gonna have an opportunity, but if you do, I would recommend it because the movie is really good. It focuses on the illegal drug trade in Colombia from the 60s to the 80s. And the most unique thing about the movie is the environment and who is doing the drug trades, because you've seen a lot of movies about drugs. You've probably even seen shows like Narcos or, all that stuff. This is completely different because the movie focuses on a tribe who has like very little of technology, and they just have a couple shacks here and there, and they're basically in the middle of like this dried up like desert land, which provides the movie with a lot of really interesting landscapes that it fully captures with the beautiful cinematography. And the tribe is very rooted in spirituality. There's one character who they'll see a bird who's been coming in for a few days, and they'll be like, oh, that bird's been coming in a few days. It looks like something bad's about to happen. They're very in touch with nature and tradition. And all that kind of slowly erodes as our main character becomes involved with trading marijuana. And it starts out slowly and very small scale, but then they realize that the business could really grow, and they end up making a ton of money, and they bring prosperity to their tribe, and they get other tribes involved. Shit ends up going very wrong. But the way that the story progresses, you start out very grounded in this tribe, and you slowly see how this builds up and escalates, I thought was really smooth and well done. And what I liked most about the movie, of all, is that it is not one of those crime movies where you're like waiting to see the crime. The chase scene and the drug scenes are cool, and like you want to see like people get shot in the head. You definitely don't want to see that, because this movie is just honest with the fact that death is tragic. Whenever people die in the movie, it's not like cool, it's like, oh shit. I'll tell you, I was not rooting for anybody's death in this movie. It was just kind of sad every time something tragic happens to see. And I really like that, because that's how it is in life. This is not a Hollywoodized depiction of a drug story. This is like real stakes of human life. And so there are a lot of scenes in this movie that really weigh down on you. There are a lot of terrible situations in this movie, and the movie does not make you feel good about them. And it was really sad. You're just like kind of like tearing your face apart watching what's happening to these people who were once, living very simply and spiritually, and then that kind of gets traded for greed as the movie goes along. But I love that the movie took that approach, and it really invested me. The movie has a very epic scale. It spans 2 decades. There are a lot of different characters, a lot of different events that happen. It's an entertaining movie. Even if you're not familiar with foreign films, you probably shouldn't really have much of a problem sticking this one out. I thought that the characters were well done for the most part. They were definitely handled with nuance. Even the main character, I thought that the subtle approach that the actor took to playing this role was really interesting, because this character was just like very serious. You see how this main character is not really as in touch with the values and spirituality as others, and then they become motivated by just getting more money. But it's not in a way where they're like, oh, my money, oh, greed. Overall, it's really fascinating just watching this crazy story, which actually is a true story, or based on true events at least, which I just think even makes it more heartbreaking. It's just a really interesting movie. Like, I never knew that any of this happened. I never knew that this would happen in that society, which actually is part of the reason the movie is great, is because it's so surprising to watch this kind of society succumb to the vices of drug trade. I wouldn't call this movie a masterpiece. There are a couple issues that I have with it. Although I thought that the approach to the characters was well done, I didn't come away feeling like I really latched onto that many characters, or that I got in anybody's head. And I think the main character actually becomes a little bit lost in the second half, where we don't really learn anything about him, and we kind of start focusing on a lot of other characters. And I kind of thought, well, that sort of shows that his character wasn't really carrying the movie in the first place. And I would have liked to kind of get into one of the characters, or a few of the characters, more than I did, get into their heads. The other thing is that while this movie does do a good job of showing how the tragedies are a disintegration of the spirituality of the village, I think that there is something about this movie that is a little one-dimensional because it becomes pretty easy to sit back and think like, I am very aware that everything that is happening is wrong, and I can tell that the movie is just going for this kind of trade between drugs and crime and greed and wealth and the spirituality. It becomes pretty obvious that this trade-off is taking place, and it just escalates the whole movie, and it doesn't really go anywhere you don't expect it to. I'm not really left with a lot to think about coming away. Even at the end of the movie, the poem that's recited that kind of summarizes the movie really only summarizes the movie and tells you some pretty obvious things that you already saw about the movie, which just shows me that there's not really a whole lot that I'm missing about the movie. It's pretty straightforward. And I would have liked to see it go a little more in depth on like, you know, that spirituality, because Embrace of the Serpent, I thought, did go deeper into like what that spirituality is and like the little nuggets of it. But this movie, I wouldn't say did that as well. But overall, I gotta say, this is a really interesting crime movie, and I haven't seen one like it, especially with like the locations, but also because of the way that it completely does not glorify the violence. It makes all the stakes seem real, all the betrayals are sad. It's not fun to watch like a lot of crime sagas are, but that doesn't mean it's not entertaining or interesting. It's a movie that has real stakes, and I really like that about this movie. I think that a lot of crime movies don't have that, and I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Have you seen Birds of Passage? Or maybe you want to see it and you can't because it's playing like nowhere, but you know, it'll come out on DVD someday. You might want to see it. This movie actually made the shortlist for the Foreign Film Oscar this year, but unfortunately didn't make the cut. I think it would have been a nice entry, but there were a lot of good foreign films last year. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Is there a movie you want me to review next? Comment below.